I'm on with him every morning. He's the co-host of the Hot Morning Show here on FS1. First things first, Mr. Nick Wright. What up, man?
What's happening, Nick?
What's up, Chris? What's up, Rob? You know, there's a lot of sadness surrounding the end of basketball season. Really none more so than the fact you called me the co-host of First Things First. In the last 3 months, I feel like you've been the co-host of First Things First, but then basketball's going to end, and Broussard's going to go on some Mediterranean cruise or something, and I'm not going to see him for a couple of months. But it's been a pleasure. It's also been a pleasure to do my best, Rob, as you try to do in the evening, of educating Mr. Broussard in the morning.
Oh,
so it's like night classes and morning classes. So it's been good. Thanks for having me on.
You know what? You're not too far from the truth. I mean, I'm going to be gone. I'm out of here, baby. All right? Yeah. Once the season's
working
over.
Long days, all day for months.
Yeah.
You deserve the time.
Thank you, my man. All right, let's get right to it, Nick. Did we give Chris Paul his flowers too early? Because before this series started, we all were praising him. Top 5. They got to give him 4 years if he wants it, right? At max money. Like all this stuff we threw at Chris Paul. Were we too premature?
Well, listen, the 4 years max money was always going to be a risky proposition. But as far as I still think he's the 5th best point guard ever. Like, who's the guy? Let's say they lose this series. If we're going Magic, Oscar, Steph, Isaiah, and then Khris, who is the guy we're going to point to that should jump him that has, like, it's like, oh, well, that player in that finals was awesome. Like, that point guard doesn't exist, at least to me. So I still think he's the 5th best point guard ever. I do think it's kind of weird. I think because he had never made the finals, like just making the finals this late in his career, we treated it in the media like it was his championship because it was the furthest he'd ever gotten. And, I mean, I was picking the Bucks throughout, so I didn't think he was going to win the championship. I still think he's the 5th best point guard ever. Is that, like, to me, I can't be like, well, now he lost in the finals, so Stockton's better than him. Like, Stockton also lost in the finals.
Yeah, but, Nick, the only problem is if they were up 2-0 and they wind up losing 4 in a row or losing 4 out of 5 and losing it, and Chris Paul continues to play as poorly, it just doesn't feel right to be saying somebody's better than somebody else after they were up 2, had a great chance to win, and he didn't play well enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just won't feel good. And I hear your point about him making it to the finals, but they had a chance to win being up 2-0. The team that wins the first game of the finals wins 70% of the time.
Yeah, I get that, but I also think that, so I understand that, and I'm going to go back to the Malone and Stockton thing. Part of the thing that helps them historically is that they lost to one of the 3 greatest players ever, right? So because of that, you don't hold those finals losses against them as much. I think if they end up losing, they being the Suns, it's going to be because Giannis is on a skyrocket of a trajectory, not as one of the, 5 best players ever, but maybe like the trajectory of a top 15 guy, maybe a trajectory of a top 12 guy. So then I think it's like, okay, you lost in a finals to an all-timer who was 10 years younger than you. Like, I think that, makes it a little more palatable than, say, if Philly was on the other side of this thing and they were potentially going to take the championship from them.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you that even if they lose, I probably still have Khris 5th. I think it's a lot more arguable. But the thing is, if he doesn't play well, there's that narrative's going to stick with him, at least for the next few years, for those that remember that he struggled at times in big playoff moments. But let's get to Khris Middleton. There are those out there starting to say he's the Batman of the Milwaukee Bucks. What do you say to that?
Is one of them on this show?
No, Rob and I do not.
No,
we do not.
Prescribe to that.
Then I can speak freely. What I would say to those people is they're idiots. Like, if you want to say Khris Middleton's Batman, then that's fine. But that's not because Giannis is Robin. It's because Giannis is Superman. It's because Giannis is actually a different type of superhero. I thought Giannis played, and this is a word we don't use in sports that often, one of the most admirable games I've ever seen last night. Because, and I think Brandon on the show this morning made the point that I hadn't thought of. The folks were putting in his ear, 3 straight 40-point games in the finals. Now you're doing what Jordan did against the Suns. There are all-time great players who would have gone into last night's game saying, I'm going to go get 40 again. Giannis, I think, understood, A, he didn't really totally exactly have it. B, Ayton has given him some trouble, and Ayton wasn't in foul trouble. And so instead, he should have had a triple-double. If Drew Holiday can just knock down a couple open shots, Giannis has triple-double. Instead, he just has 8 assists. He has a critical steal in the fourth quarter, 2 massive blocks in the fourth quarter, including one of the best blocks ever, and put his imprint on the game in every place. I don't care that Middleton is the guy hitting the jump shots, and listen, I know you initially kind of, I don't want to say scoffed, but you didn't love my Shaq-Kobe comp, and Middleton isn't Kobe, of course. But a lot of it is, as far as roles, similarities, and that never, to me, there was never a doubt who the best player on those Lakers teams were, as great as Kobe was. Because Shaq was so, and so to me, that's the situation we're in, even though you weren't at the end of those games necessarily dumping it down to Shaq. What I actually think helped Shaq's kind of rep historically is that team was so damn good, they weren't in a lot of clutch situations. Like, there wasn't a lot of close,
and they didn't face great teams
games
in those finals, other than Philly. Yeah.
Well, and Philly wasn't a great team. Philly had, they had a great defensive roster, and they had a great player in Iverson, but that's not a great team. They got tested twice, and it was in the conference finals in 2000 against Portland, and the conference finals in 2002 against Sacramento. And by the way, that Kings, and by the way, the thing that Kings team had, and to a degree also the Blazers and Kings, the two teams that tested them, those teams didn't have closers either. You got C. Webb, who was never great in those moments. Peja airballed the 3. You had Pippen on the Blazers, who wasn't a great closer, and Rashid, who he was a really good player, but not great closer. So, I just think there's not a lot of moments we think of with those Shaq-Kobe Lakers where Shaq is, kind of a non-factor at the end of games, but there's just not a lot of games where, they were in close games. They were just crushing those teams.
Right. I agree with pretty much everything you said there. Let me ask you this, though. What do you make of Khris Middleton? Because I contend, and he's not a superstar. I think he's a star. I got to give him that. But I feel like if he played with more pizzazz, better handle, more dunks, little flashier, and if his personality was more outgoing or in your face, a little more edge, I feel like we'd be talking a lot more about him.
Absolutely. I mean, what was it, last year or the year before? He was almost, or maybe he did get 50, 40, 90, or he missed it by percentage points. And he doesn't carry himself like a star. And I think that's what you're saying. And that's not a knock. He has no flash. He seems to have, I've never heard a single memorable Khris Middleton soundbite. And I do think in the NBA, we really care about pedigree. So, we do care where you were drafted. And we kind of attach that to you. And Middleton's a second-round pick who was in the G League. So, it's just people are going to be hesitant to anoint him to anything. But I also do think that it's not like he's always been this good. I said it on the show this morning.
You're right.
He had 10 career 35-point playoff games. He's had, not playoff games, 10 career 35-point games. He has 4 this playoffs. And they have been in the biggest moments. Game 3 against Brooklyn, Game 6 against Brooklyn. In the biggest moment, Game 4 of the finals. So he has jumped up a level that makes him, to me, to me, he is right there on the Jason Tatum, Devin Booker.
You had to go
tier.
there, didn't you?
What?
You had to throw
I'm not
Jason
wrong.
Tatum under the bus.
I
knew it. I knew it was coming.
Now you're sneak dissing Khris Middleton because you said me comparing him to Middleton is throwing him under the bus. I'm not. Like, he's on that tier of guy that is a star player who's not a superstar player. I don't think there's any, let me tell you this. Here's a
He wasn't even on your tiers. Am I correct? He at the beginning of the season or even through the season, was he ever in your tiers?
Well, the full tiers do go to 68 players. Broussard, they don't let me do the whole thing on television. They say it would take 38 minutes. So he was definitely on the tiers.
He didn't make the TV tiers.
I think he's, how about this?
I used to watch that show, The Wonder Years. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, my goodness. Would you rather have him
They got a
or
new
CJ McCollum? I'd rather have Middleton than CJ.
Middleton,
and I like
definitely.
CJ.
Yeah, Middleton.
So,
sure.
he's, he is that level. He's an all-star player that's not a superstar. I think that's what he is.
You know how this radio works. We'd love to keep you on
Nick,
for the rest of the show, man, but we got to roll. I'll see you in the morning, my man.
Thanks,
See
Nick.
you in the morning. Hey, Rob, don't let him hedge. Broussard's a big hedger. He's like,
I
but I
speak
give
facts.
the Bucks 45%. He's a hedger.
Hold on.
Don't let
Am
him
I
hedge.
wrong?
I know,
it's a
right.
nail biter of a series.
That's what
that
it
was
is.
called
Nail biter.
analysis.
Yeah, okay.
I
No,
told
talk
Rob
to you guys
this
later.
at the beginning of the show, Nick. I don't give
Nick.
hot takes. I give the truth.
Nick, here's Khris earlier in the show. Here you go.
Michael Jordan never had a bad game. No,
that's typical Khris.
They are, no.
Yep, I know. That's what I hear him say that every morning.
Nick,
it's unbelievable.
they tricked me. I did not say that.
right.
These guys, I'm working with some backstabbers. All right, that's our great
talk
Nick
to you guys
Wright.
later. Goodbye.
Check him out in the morning. First things first, 7:30 to 9:30 Eastern every morning on FS1. Keep it locked.